The coffee pot slipped from Emma's trembling hands, shattering across the diner floor in a cascade of glass and dark liquid. But she barely noticed. Her entire world had narrowed to the man standing in the doorway, the same storm-gray eyes, the same slight dimple in his left cheek, the same way his hair fell just so across his forehead. Michael. After 12 years, Michael was standing in her restaurant, and she couldn't breathe. Emma Chen had learned long ago that life didn't hand out fairy tales to girls like her. At 32, she wore exhaustion like a second skin, her feet perpetually aching from double shifts, her hands calloused from years of carrying trays and wiping down tables. The Silver Spoon Diner wasn't much: cracked vinyl booths, flickering neon signs, and a kitchen that barely passed health inspections, but it was hers in the only way that mattered. She knew every regular, every stain on the counter, every temperamental quirk of the ancient coffee machine. This place had kept her afloat when everything else in her life had fallen apart. "Emma, you okay?" Maria's concerned voice cut through her paralysis. Her coworker was already kneeling, picking up the larger pieces of broken glass. "I'm fine," Emma whispered, though her voice sounded hollow even to her own ears. She forced herself to look away from Michael, to crouch down and help clean the mess, even as her hands shook so badly she could barely grasp the shards. Michael hadn't noticed her yet. He stood with two men in expensive suits, scanning the worn interior of the diner with an expression Emma couldn't quite read. He looked different, polished, powerful, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. But underneath all that success, she could still see the boy who'd held her hand under the bleachers, who'd promised her forever when they were 20 and stupid and in love. The boy who'd left for business school in New York without a goodbye. Table 7, Maggie, the owner, called out wearily. She'd been coughing all week, her face pale and drawn. "Emma, you take it." Emma's stomach dropped. Of course fate would be this cruel. She smoothed down her stained apron, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, and grabbed her notepad with fingers that refused to steady. As she approached the table, Michael finally looked up, and the recognition hit his face like a physical blow. "Emma." His voice was exactly the same. Deeper maybe, more refined, but still carrying that slight rasp that used to make her heart flutter. "Welcome to the Silver Spoon," she said, proud that her voice came out mostly level. "Can I start you gentlemen off with some coffee?" "Emma," Michael repeated, standing so abruptly his chair scraped against the floor. "I can't believe you work here." One of the suit-wearing men cleared his throat uncomfortably. Emma felt her cheeks burn with humiliation. She knew what Michael saw: a tired waitress in a dying diner, so far from the dreams they'd once shared. She'd wanted to be an artist back then, had filled sketchbooks with designs and paintings, had believed the world was full of possibility. "Yes," she said simply. "I work here. Now, coffee." The meeting was torture. Emma forced herself to stay professional as she took their orders, refilled their cups, brought their food. She caught fragments of their conversation, words like acquisition, and property value, and development potential. Michael kept stealing glances at her, his expression troubled, while his associates discussed the diner as if it were just another business transaction. Which, Emma realized with growing horror, it was. During her break, she cornered Maggie in the kitchen. "What's going on? Why are those men here?" Maggie's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't want you to find out like this. The building's been sold. The new owner wants to renovate, turn it into some upscale bistro. We've got 30 days, Em. Then we're done." The world tilted. The Silver Spoon wasn't just Emma's job, it was her lifeline. After her mother's cancer treatment had drained every penny of savings, after her father's death had left her scrambling to pay off debt, this place had been her constant. More than that, it was the community's constant. It was where old Joe came every morning for coffee and conversation after his wife died. Where Maria worked nights to put her kids through school. Where teenagers came after football games and elderly couples celebrated anniversaries because they could afford the prices. "There has to be something we can do," Emma said desperately. Maggie just shook her head, looking older than her 60 years. "The new owner paid cash. It's done." That evening, as Emma was finishing her shift, Michael waited by the door. The restaurant was empty now, just the two of them and the ghosts of conversation past. "Can we talk?" he asked. Emma wanted to say no. Wanted to protect herself from whatever this conversation would bring. But she nodded, because underneath the hurt and the years, she'd never quite gotten over him. They sat in a booth, the same booth where they'd shared their first kiss when Michael worked the night shift during college, before his father's connections opened doors Emma couldn't even see. "I'm sorry," Michael said quietly. "For how I left. For not calling. I was young and stupid and scared, and I convinced myself you'd be better off without me." "You don't get to decide what's better for me," Emma replied, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. "You left, Michael. You just disappeared." "I know." He ran his hand through his hair, that old nervous gesture that made him suddenly, painfully familiar. "My father had this whole life planned out for me. He said a serious girlfriend would be a distraction, that I needed to focus on building the business. And like an idiot, I listened. By the time I realized what I'd given up, it felt too late to come back." "Why are you here now?" Emma asked, though part of her already knew. Michael's silence was answer enough. "You're the new owner," she said flatly. "You bought this place." "My company did, yes." "Emma, I didn't know you worked here." "If I had." "What?" She laughed bitterly. "You wouldn't have bought it. You'd have found another struggling property to flip. This is what you do now. You come into neighborhoods and erase the places that matter to the people who actually live here. That's not fair, isn't it?" Emma stood, suddenly angry. "You know what I see. I see someone who forgot where he came from. You used to understand what it meant to work for every dollar, to worry about making rent, to need places like this. When did you become the kind of person who looks at the silver spoon and sees development potential, instead of home?" Michael flinched. "You think I don't know what I've become? You think I'm proud of it?" "Emma, I've spent 12 years building an empire, and for what? I'm successful, sure, rich, but I'm empty. I came back to this town hoping to find something. Anything that felt real. And you're starting by destroying the one place that kept this community together." Emma shook her head. "That's not how you find something real, Michael. That's how you prove you've lost it completely." She turned to leave, but Michael caught her hand, the same way he used to, gentle but insistent. "Wait, please." He took a deep breath. "Show me. Help me understand what I'm missing. Not as the CEO or the property owner, but as someone who used to know what mattered. Spend one day with me. Let me see this place through your eyes." Emma should have said no. Every self-protective instinct screamed at her to walk away. But something in his voice, a vulnerability she remembered from late nights when he'd admitted his fears about never being good enough for his father's legacy, made her hesitate. "One day," she agreed. "But after that, we're done. I won't let you break my heart twice." The next morning, Michael arrived at 5 a.m., when Emma started her shift. She handed him an apron without ceremony. "You want to understand. Work." And work he did. Michael, who commanded boardrooms and closed million-dollar deals, spent the day pouring coffee, clearing tables, and learning the rhythm of the diner. Emma watched as old Joe shared stories about his late wife, how his eyes lit up when Michael actually listened. She saw him help Maria carry plates when the lunch rush hit, laughing when he nearly dropped an entire tray of burgers. She noticed how he remembered regulars' names, how he stayed late to help fix the temperamental ice machine, how his expensive suit got stained with grease and coffee and he didn't seem to care. During a rare quiet moment, Emma found him in the back office with Maggie, going through the diner's financial records. "These numbers can't be right," he said, frowning. "They're right," Maggie confirmed wearily. "We barely break even most months. But we keep prices low because that's what folks around here can afford. Some months, I pay out of pocket just to keep the lights on." Michael looked up at Emma, something shifting in his expression. "This isn't just a business for you, is it? It's a mission. It's survival," Emma corrected. "For all of us. This diner isn't fancy, but it matters. When Mrs. Rodriguez's husband got deported, we let her run a tab until she got on her feet. When Tommy Miller came back from Afghanistan with PTSD, he washed dishes here because we were the only place that would hire him. This isn't about profit margins, Michael. It's about people." That night, after closing, they sat on the diner's front steps like they used to sit on his apartment stoop all those years ago. The street was quiet, the neighborhood settling into its nighttime rhythm. "I've made a lot of money," Michael said softly. "Built a company that my father's finally proud of. But today I felt more useful than I have in years. More connected. More alive. Emma didn't respond, afraid of what she might say, what she might hope for. I can't undo buying this property, Michael continued. The contracts are signed. But Emma, what if we did something different? What if instead of tearing it down and starting over, we renovated? Kept the heart of the silver spoon but made it sustainable. I could invest in upgrading the kitchen, improving the space, maybe expanding to hire more people from the neighborhood. You could still serve the community, but the business would actually survive. Why? Emma asked, her voice barely a whisper. Why would you do that? Michael turned to face her, and in his eyes she saw the boy she'd fallen in love with, but also the man he'd become, complicated and flawed and trying. Because you were right. I forgot what mattered. I forgot that success without purpose is just noise. And because he hesitated, vulnerable in a way his expensive suit couldn't hide. Because I never stopped loving you, Emma. Not really. And I want a chance, not to erase the past 12 years, but to build something better. Together. Emma felt tears slip down her cheeks. You hurt me. When you left, you shattered something I didn't think could be fixed. I know. And I can't promise I won't make mistakes again. But I can promise I'll stay. I'll fight for this, for the diner, for this community, for us. If you'll let me. She thought about the girl she'd been at 20, heartbroken and lost. She thought about the woman she'd become, strong and scarred and still standing. She thought about second chances and the courage it took to believe in them. One condition, she said finally. We do this right. The renovations happen with the community's input. We keep the prices affordable. We protect the employees and the regulars. This isn't about building your empire, it's about preserving their home. Deal, Michael agreed without hesitation. But I have one condition too. What? Let me take you to dinner. A real date. Not here, not at some fancy restaurant, just us. Give me a chance to show you I've learned what matters. Emma smiled, a real smile, the first genuine one she'd managed since Michael walked back into her life. You're taking me to Mario's Pizza. Same place as our first date. Mario's is still open, barely, which is why we'll be supporting local businesses on our date. She nudged his shoulder with hers, a gesture both familiar and terrifying in its intimacy. 6 months later, the Silver Spoon reopened. The booths were new but styled like the old ones, the kitchen gleamed with modern equipment, and the walls displayed murals painted by Emma, scenes of the neighborhood, portraits of regular customers, moments of community captured in vibrant color. Michael had kept his promise. More than that, he'd moved back home, splitting his time between running his company remotely and actually working in the diner 3 days a week, relearning what his father's single-minded ambition had taught him to forget. On opening night, as Emma watched old Joe tear up over his perfectly made coffee, as Maria laughed with her kids in a booth, as the community filled the space with warmth and noise and life, she felt Michael's hand find hers. Thank you, he whispered. For what? For not giving up on me. For reminding me who I used to be. Who I want to be. Emma squeezed his hand, thinking about broken coffee pots and second chances, about how the kindest thing we can do is see each other fully. Mistakes and potential, past hurt and future hope, exactly as we are and exactly as we might become. We saved each other, she said simply. That's what love does. And in that moment, with their community thriving around them, Emma finally believed in fairy tales again. Not the kind where everything is perfect, but the better kind. The kind where broken things get mended. Where people grow and change and sometimes, if you're very lucky, find their way home.